How long do these new YouTube things stay on for YouTube?
Stay on.
That is, you've got a channel
Forever.
until YouTube decides to take it off, I suppose.
I know, I just wondered because sometimes.
Okay, we're live now, everyone. So we'll open today the Strategy and Planning Committee papers and meeting. Oh, thanks. Just rounding up our last remaining people before we get underway. Welcome everyone. We didn't receive apologies before we published this, but we have got some apologies today. So we have Councillor Carmen Hope and Councillor Kevin Malcolm, who, sorry, Kate?
Actually moved.
Moved those. Seconded Councillor Kelleher. All in favour?
You were, I think they were going to say where they were.
Yes, I was about to say. I think, are they both at the Balance Farm Awards? Yeah, thank you. Yes, so that's great that they've gone along to support that. Thank you, everyone. Public forum, no public forum today, no. Confirmation of the agenda, no other papers to add, nothing to change at this point, so we'll confirm that. Any conflicts of interest today in the two papers we're receiving? No. Okay. Confirmation of the minutes then. Yep.
Second.
Sure. Kate and Alexa on moving and seconding the minutes. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. We do have the action register there as well. There was just one that was overdue, which might be worth noting, which was the Dunedin Harbourside adaptation collaboration with DCC matter. We'd set a time frame of the 28th or end of February. So I don't know if Dr. Palmer wanted to comment or Andrew, you wanted to comment.
The same with the chair.
Oh, okay. Sure.
We delved into this in Oamaru, sort of covered
that.
The ball's sort of in the DCC's court to a certain degree, just waiting to hear back. Aaron was keen to have a position from council before we had the conversation. So I don't believe that they've had a council meeting to discuss the topic, but clearly we've indicated we want to collaborate.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
That's the thing, because just on the Back Beach is now going to have a marina in it. It was news to me. This is Back Beach in Port Chalmers.
Oh.
Yep. So, I mean,
Please.
sorry, microphone is on. Is it on? Yes,
Yep.
right up. And so can you, I don't want us to do any work, but we have to really collaborate because this stuff keeps on happening that does affect people's lives and their decisions about things. And I don't know who the hell's in charge.
So,
Yes,
can I add something?
sure.
Gwyneth is working up the scope for the harbour plan that you asked for, I think, in Oamaru.
Or just to have the decisions get made.
Yes, and that I think some of what you're talking about, which is further development of structures and things in the harbour, might well be within the scope.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that update. Okay, well, on to the paper. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Worth noting for those that aren't aware that on the second item, and I appreciate.
Oh, your microphone, sorry, Kate.
I thought I'd done it. Apologies. I just thought it would be worth noting for those that are interested in the Otago Trail Network that on the 8th of May, the Dunstan section of that is opening. And again, it's wonderful to see the access to the river that a different group is contributing to and contributing to that network. It'll be a great way of people getting to see it if they want to participate.
Thank you. It does look exciting. Okay, on to the papers then. 7.1 Regional Public Transport Plan. We have Dr. Palmer and Gary Maloney here today to join us in discussion on this paper. So,
Madam Chair, just before the work, as they do, I found real difficulties. I hear people say RLTPs and things like that.
Oh, sorry.
I need somebody. No, wasn't criticism of you. I need somebody to explain how these plans fit into what.
Oh, right.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because,
Doesn't
yeah,
fit.
but I need to know
Yeah,
that. 'cause
Transport Planning 101 framework.
Yeah,
Yep.
please.
We can no doubt do that. I'm just going to outline how the paper is structured in terms of how I was anticipating that we would chair it today. I've actually circulated that to councillors already, so you're well aware of how that may pan out. Because there's two sort of components today. One is looking at the overall strategy for the regional public transport plan and whether or not we support that, the challenges, the vision and the objectives going forward. And then there's the more procedural stuff like how we would handle the hearing. So not only the time frame for submissions, but also a hearings panel. And who would have delegation as well in choosing the independent that has been proposed for that hearings panel. So I guess the question really is just if any of our councillors are keen to put themselves forward for consideration or as commissioners, giving them the chance to leave the room for that discussion. So I was going to break this paper into two chunks and consider recommendations 1, 3 and 5 first, and then the voting on the 2 and the 4. So does anybody wish to discuss that procedural part of how we handle the paper before we get underway with that?
Julie, the two, why is 2 linked with 4?
That's why that's exactly my question too.
I think you might have the numbering.
Oh, sorry, I think I have.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going off the run sheet here and I shouldn't have done that. So, 1, we received the report. We wouldn't, so you're right, Marion. I was looking at the run sheet there and you're right. Confirming what would be behind the plan wouldn't be discussed with people who potentially would be on the hearings panel. Yeah, that's right. 3, about the submission period. Yep, that would probably be fine for everyone to discuss, I think.
Yep.
And then 5 of the delegations
And the appoints
would
the
also
hearings
be
committee,
fine,
yeah.
I think. So, yeah, sorry, it's
It's only
4
4.
and 2, isn't it, that need to be excluded till later on.
Which is what I
Thanks
think
for-
you said in your email.
But why
Yeah.
would 2 be excluded?
If your hearings,
I see.
that was open for discussion. Actually, I flagged that in my head as well. That would you like to exclude that? It would be possible for hearings panel members as councillors to endorse the way forward for the regional public transport plan and then also be a commissioner when it's the general broad framework. That is possible. Or should we exclude it? Councillor Wilson?
So this is just for consultation, and as such, it isn't the decision-making.
Yeah.
The decision-making comes with the hearing. So the question is there a conflict in the councillors who may be on the hearings panel putting up for consultation? We're all on the hearings panel for the annual plan.
It's essentially doing a role as a councillor before they're then doing a role as a commissioner, and it's a standard role as a councillor.
Yeah, and in the long-term plan, we all voted on the long-term plan and then sit on the hearing for that. So I would say it was more akin to that, and I wouldn't have that problem personally. It is for consultation.
Yeah. Okay. You're still wanting to handle the paper in that manner?
I think some questions we want to ask at some stage, just to assist the process.
Okay, well,
Can I ask how this fits in with the workshop we're about to have?
right, yes. Why don't we have a general introduction then to the Regional Land Transport Plan? We won't talk about commissioners or those types of issues at this point, but generally about the plan and where we're heading to and where we've come from.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you like me to talk about this diagram, which comes back to Councillor Hobbs first? Perhaps I'll do that first and then talk a little bit about the plan. So if you go to page 12, there's a very colourful diagram that's got lots of arrows and boxes on it.
I'm deeply worried about the person who designed this.
It's not my diagram, but it's probably scary that I understand it.
Sorry, Councillor Laws just has a procedural thing.
I'm confused. Why are we having a workshop to discuss the policies when here are the policies set on the objectives laid out as per the motions?
Well, that was my question. Why?
What
happens at the workshop?
We're having a workshop because here's the paper. Here are the objectives. Here are the policy considerations. I don't want to go into secret to have a workshop about something that should be.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Thank you. Yeah.
Can we hear the introduction, see what Gary
and Gavin Thanks, Gary and
To
Gavin.
answer that question, so the paper today is the high level. These are what we think our challenges are. This is our vision for public transport. This is our objectives. The workshop then drops to that next level around how will we give effect to that upper level stuff. And so the workshop.
We're having a workshop before we actually even discuss what the high level stuff is.
No,
we're doing high level stuff now.
So today we're having the objectives and the higher level,
But there's no point having.
There aren't policies attached
workshop.
to this. Excuse me, Councillor Calvert. There aren't policies attached to this particular paper today. They're the objectives. So higher level. So it's we're going to next, after we do this, talk about the process from here. Gary and Gavin right now are going to talk about what we're aiming to do today. Thank you.
You remember we workshopped this previously?
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In terms of the figure on page 12, figure 1, I think the best way of explaining it is the direction comes down from central government through its government policy statement on land transport funding, and so you'll see that's in the top.
GPS.
Yeah, the GPS, the top right-hand corner. So that's
a strange name for having.
Yep. So that basically says, as central government, these are the kind of outcomes that we want from our transport system. And if you're going to get funding, NZTA and local government, you need to align with this stuff.
Right. When's the last one of those been published?
So there was a new GPS adopted by government last year.
Right.
And so the Regional Land Transport Plan, which I'll talk about in a wee minute, is required to be consistent with that.
It's when Twyford was still minister.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
So that sets a high overall approach. The Regional Land Transport Plan is this region's view on what it wants to achieve for its transport system.
Right.
And also this region's funding pitch to the Transport Agency around, we want you to invest in state highways, local roads, walking, cycling, public transport. And so the agency's also got to give effect to the GPS.
Right.
But ultimately decisions around what it will fund, bearing that in mind, sits with its board. So all the regions around the country prepare this Regional Land Transport Plan every 6 years. In between, there's a review at the 3-year mark, which is effectively a new RLTP anyway. So that's really how we get our funding from the Transport Agency, whether it's us for our public transport or the TAs for local roads, walking and cycling. The Regional Public Transport Plan is required to be not inconsistent with the Regional Land Transport Plan.
Right.
So that's what we've tried to demonstrate, that, for example, the vision that we'll talk about
the
a bit later
lines,
is not inconsistent with that. The plans around how we do public transport in our region, and it basically comes down to what are the services that we think are integral to our network and how might we manage those. And that also picks up on infrastructure, bus stops, bus shelters, how we might brand them, customer service kind of stuff. And we'll touch on some of that in the workshop. It's not, the RPTP is not a funding document. So the funding part is your long-term / annual plan. So that helps you implement your
RTPT.
public transport plan. It's also your long-term annual plan is also if you like, the kind of direct input to how we do our part, our regional council, not the kind of regional, but our ORC part of the RLTP. So what goes in the RLTP for us, so with respect to bus services, is actually has to be consistent with what's in our long-term plan. And so that's the connection with both of those documents.
Bloody hell, sorry.
Does that help any, or does that just confuse
It's quite
more?
a complex planning framework, isn't it? But thank you, and you have got that diagram. Yep, Councillor Forbes.
I think one of the issues with this framework, I mean, the framework's fine itself, but is that the dates that everything comes together, which aren't in there, make it really difficult for anything to actually keep that strategic flow because the dates don't match up. I mean, we are going to be looking and accepting and writing and putting out and so on a public transport plan after the LTP's already gone. So we can't impact the other parts of the other planning regimes.
So you're quite right. This time around, actually probably as it has been for the last two, that RLTP process runs in the same kind of time frame to your long-term plan. So we have to submit, each region has to submit its RLTP, its adopted RLTP to the Transport Agency by 30th of June. Well, that's only a week or so after we've done it, and TAs have done their own thing in terms of adopting their long-term plans / annual plans. And that's actually, this time they've pushed it back 2 months. So in theory, because the GPS was delayed, they extended it so it was 30th of June. If it hadn't been extended, it would have been April, which is even more out of alignment with local government processes. I think you've mentioned long-term plan and RPTP. I'm not encouraging this, but you do have the annual plan thing through the 2 and year 3 to.
It's a safety.
But if you don't have placeholders in place, it's pretty tricky to drive anything significant through that.
So one of the tricks, and we'll talk about it in the workshop with the RPTP, and this follows up on feedback that we've had from QLDC, Waitaki District, Dunedin City, is to put some what I'm calling proposed trial units in there. So that's that obstacle gone, because as I mentioned at the previous briefing, unless you've got that kind of covered in your plan, you've got to go and change your plan before you can go and do something. And you'll remember the hassle that we had with the Queenstown Ferry because it wasn't recognised as an integral unit. So,
thanks, Gary. If you might want to move on to background and where we've got to and what we're proposing today, just everyone to remember that we on the 9th of December did endorse the proposed scope and the approach to engagement, and engagements occurred. So
thank you, Madam Chair. So as that is the lead, and so today we're looking for 3 things. One is to get you to endorse the challenges, vision and objectives, and that's for the purpose of consultation. So they won't ultimately be the final, but it's the starting point for that. One is around the submission period, and the third is around the hearings process. If I go back to the first one, we've had quite a process with respect to that. You mentioned in December you approved the scope for the plan review, and we got on then in earnest and started some work. And so we had actually been talking with our TAs prior to that and NZTA, and they were aware of what was in that paper before it went to council, so that they had full knowledge. After the adoption of that paper, we worked with all the TAs and the Transport Agency, so this is at officer level, to develop up the challenges. So the challenges that you see in this document that were also previously workshopped have come out of that process. We also at an officer level had separate conversations with each of the district councils in our region and Transport Agency just to pick up on some stuff, and I mentioned a few minutes ago some of that. You'll see that in the workshop with respect to some trial units, and I'm also aware that councillors had some conversations with Waitaki, Queenstown, I'm not sure with Dunedin, and that's addressed in the December paper as well, and will come through. We've workshopped with you or briefed you with respect to the draft challenges, vision and objectives prior to going to the community, to the stakeholder groups. And actually, between those two steps, we also had a session with our district council and NZTA partners to ensure that they were up to speed with where that piece of work had got to. That wasn't well attended. We then had the stakeholder workshops, and that's referred to in the council paper. Following that, we shared with the TAs again, this is where this piece of work has got to. Have you got any more feedback? Paper was then developed for today, and with respect to the workshop following this, all the draft policies as they are now have again been shared with all the TAs and NZTA for feedback, and they've still got some time to provide that as a link back into this. So there has been quite an amount of engagement with the district councils at officer level and also the transport agency.
Point of information.
Just I was wondering, we're on that exact point, and then we'll go. Did you also engage with Connecting Dunedin and the Queenstown equivalent?
So in that 3-month period, I don't think there has been those governance level meetings taking place. We've certainly engaged with the same officials that are involved in those as, within the TAs.
Okay. Councillor Hobbs. Sorry, I think Councillor Laws as well. You had your hand up before. And
That's
then,
right.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs, Councillor Wilson.
Just again, it's about. So I attended a Connect Dunedin meeting or something that invited all the councillors of both sides into the room, and what I got from that meeting. Sorry, this is public, but DCC councillors seemed to be really uptight because the agenda wasn't clear, and I thought we were going to have questions about this sort of stuff, and it was totally unrelated. It was about the bloody roads going past the hospital. So who sets that agenda, and what are those meetings, and how do they relate to this? Sorry. This is what drives me mad.
Councillor Noon's going to have a go at that.
So just turn the clocks back. Sometime around about the middle of last year, maybe August or September, governance initiated an opportunity to speak with governance at the TA level around the region.
Right.
We visited, I think it was Kate, Alexa, Kevin maybe, and myself in Waitaki, similar in Queenstown. I missed the Dunedin meeting. I was out of town.
Lots of us, you were at Dunedin.
But there was maybe half a dozen of ORC councillors that attended that one. And the purpose of that was very much, it was a preliminary step to this process to, I suppose, have an open conversation about what are the aspirations going forward from each TA, and recognising Queenstown and Dunedin are the only two that have actually got passenger transport, but we also spoke to the others. Actually, I don't think we got to Central Otago in the end because that was the only one. We didn't get
and Clutha didn't
respond.
Didn't think they required the conversation.
Clutha had one at a different level, at a community level.
Yeah.
We certainly had a conversation, or Kate and I attended a meeting that was organised by Gary, and Gary was attended as well by Jean Proctor, who is a Clutha District Council employee.
Community Development Officer.
Community Development Officer, thank you. So they were very much a preliminary high-level conversation just to trigger thinking about this process that ORC were going to initiate formally a month or two later. Then we got to the December meeting and adopted the scope and flowed from there.
And what the hell was this last meeting that we had between Dunedin?
Sarah perhaps wanted to say something too.
Okay, I'll say three things. First of all, Connecting Dunedin deals with not only our transport issues, but with the issues of our transport partners, so NZTA and the DCC. So the reason why you were called to the last meeting to have a look at the roading network is because we work in that partnership. That's why. So that's the first thing. I guess what I kind of have a question and a comment, which is, firstly, staff were never briefed about the meetings that you had. So we never knew you were having them. And as far as I'm aware, I do not know, I haven't been briefed subsequently about the content of them. So if there is a disconnect, it's happened at the political level. We have never had to my knowledge, any information about those conversations?
So we, through the chair, we sent a letter, I thought, originally to all the TAs indicating that this is what we'd like to do with them. But I thought that that had filtered through to staff as well, that was on the cards.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure if we need to get into a big discussion on this, but
No,
I'm just trying to
say there's a missing piece.
but the fact is that we have had some level of engagement with governance, but possibly not at the level that they may have hoped or anticipated with us. Don't know. Anyway, we are where we are. Dr. Palmer, sorry, Kate, you're up next, but Dr. Palmer, I think you wanted to say something there on that matter.
Yes, Madam Chair, as a consequence of those councillor to councillor meetings, we did receive an email from Mayor Bolt, which had some considerations, I suppose. We incorporated those into your paper you received in December with a response to each of those issues. I don't believe we had any other material received from any other council.
And no briefing from our own councillors.
Thank you. Okay, right. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I think most of what has been said is absolutely correct. We own the issue. And in December the 9th, we decided, and there was some debate about it, whether we continue with that process, because we had gone out to the community saying we aren't the technical staff, we're just making you very aware of this is what is going to happen. We then limited ourselves in December to the process by which the scope of the RPTP would be. We didn't look at new routes and things, and we didn't ensure at that stage that there was a governance to governance loop or a governance loop into that process. We own the issue. I absolutely agree with the CEO about that, because we went out, said this is the process, this is what we hope we'll get feedback on. One council decided to do it in one way. The other councils actually haven't had that opportunity, in my mind, at the governance level. I'm not critical of the staff that hasn't happened. We owned the issue on December the 9th. And what my nervousness is now is that we should be just pausing. We can adopt the challenges and all of those things. I think that's absolutely fine. I just want to ensure that we get that level of buy-in from the TAs at the next level on policy before we do a hearing, because I think that, or even challenge ourselves whether the scope we've given ourselves is broad enough, in order to ensure that those other governors have that feed in, because this is critical. It only happens one every 6 or 7 years. It's
updated every 3.
Every 3, but the review is, that's usually just a review. This we have to get right. This is the future of where we can respond to climate change. And that's where my nervousness was, and I obviously didn't articulate it well enough in December, because I was nervous then that we were limiting ourselves too much and not giving that feed-in loop. But we are where we are now, and I think we all own that issue. I'm not being critical of staff on that. But what I want to know is how we can get to that governance point, given the timeframes. And sorry, I wasn't aware of the 30th of June and whether that's really a tight date. But I think our hearings should be later, and that we should be feeding in. That's where my concern is. The question is, well, I have a question in that background. Is there an opportunity for us to ensure at the next level that the consultation on the policies and any concerns about the scope we've given ourselves can be incorporate feedback with governance before we adopt a plan? And what would that do to the timeframes?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the only way that you can have that extra step in there with governors of other councils is to push the timeframe out to significantly, depending on how it fits with their program.
It's an important matter and an important consideration. I don't know if on the spot you are able to talk us through timeframes and what that would do to established. So basically, we've got a council decision already on the scope. So does that matter? It could be rescinded, okay. But also in terms of planning and in terms of lining up with other requirements. Do you want to talk us through that now, or do you need time to gather your thoughts?
Well, I guess council has to be really, really clear what problem it's trying to solve here. I haven't quite heard what the problem is. We have relied on officials in every council connecting with their elected members, just as we do with you when they are doing things, okay? Yeah. What I'm hearing is a desire to redesign the process so there's a more direct engagement with elected members of the territorial authorities, but you need to be really clear on that. Then we would need to think about time frame for that change process.
Yeah.
And I think any change process will inevitably cause this to roll into the next financial year. We will not hit the annual plan target. I'm not saying that we have to hit it. We need to be really, really clear that that's a consequence. Can't today design that process, well, come up with that time frame, because clearly it depends on the availability of other people. But you've got to be really, really clear what you're wanting to change and why.
Yep. So we couldn't make the annual plan. It would go out into next year. We'd need to be aware of that. We'd need to rescind a council decision. We'd probably need to sit this matter on the table and come back with another paper to look at the pathway forward if that was the approach that we were going to go down. Councillor Noon, Councillor Calvert and everyone else. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think, Kate's point is, and to pick up on Gavin's point, what are we trying to solve here? What is the problem? So there's potential concern that we haven't fully consulted with TA. So let's just put that on the table. But obviously there's been a lot of staff-to-staff conversations, and that's been thorough and robust. So my question is around what disadvantages are going to be in the plan if another layer of consultation at governance level with TAs? Is there anything that can't happen going forward, knowing that Gary's just talked about trial units, and I'm just trying to understand I assume, are potential proposals or whatever going forward that have been raised through consultation, I assume. So if we've got that flexibility going forward and don't have to rehash the whole plan again, that would certainly put my mind at rest, knowing that we've got that up our sleeve, so to speak.
I mean, what up your sleeve?
Well, these trial units, I just want to understand what do trial units mean? Does that mean
how substantial would they be to alleviating the
well, this consultation problem is around not having scope in the current plan. We've adopted the scope. If the problem is that we haven't got enough scope to be able to cater for potential additional services, that's what I was trying to understand. What are these trial units? What does that mean?
Yeah, I guess the question is, would the governance level be appeased by just extra routes as well? Or we don't know. Is it a whole range of different issues that they may bring up? But anyway, Dr. Palmer.
Madam Chair, I think without dropping down into some of the detail, I think the question is, if you move the RPTP adoption into the next financial year, does that impact on delivery of anything that we have planned to deliver in the first part of the next financial year? Like, is there some sort of consequential thing that relies on this? And the answer is no. We will still get on and deliver, subject to LTP adoption, the transport program that we've got in year one.
Okay. Next, that's okay, Councillor Noon.
Well, I don't really understand what trial units, what we're talking about, but if we don't want to talk about the detail until the workshop, that's fine.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the trial units are merely an enabler. They don't commit council to fund or implement anything. It's just so that you can we can subsequently do the work through the next 1, 2, 3 years to make them a reality, if that's what we hear back from the community. So, that delay doesn't actually hinder anything with respect to those.
All right.
So it just allows, through the chair, so it just allows flexibility. It's not any particular service enhancement. It's just a generic
possibility,
clause,
placeholder,
whatever pops up that could be considered. Okay, thank you.
Right, Councillor Calvert.
I'm a bit confused, as I think some others are for different reasons. It seems to me that this process has been good, and I thank you for making it clear where we are in the sense of that this is a consultation document heading off for whatever it is, and you've been to a lot of trouble to get to this point. Obviously, it was thorough enough so as that when you had your final look at it, you changed 5 words out of the proposal you had before that, having listened to everybody. So obviously it was pretty close to how you thought it should be in the first place, and that feedback only. So I would be reasonably confident that it won't be changing a whole heap. And the reason why I say that first is because that doesn't, however, make me comfortable, and I'd like to seek comfort from you as to why we would be talking about anything in a workshop that could be consequential on something we haven't yet done because it's out for consultation, because we're just about to make it out for consultation. So there's 2 questions. That the timing, it sounds like from what you've just said, Dr. Palmer, that the timing isn't that urgent sort of, which means that 3 weeks, I would be concerned that it's only 3 weeks. And the second thing is, if it's out for consultation, what are we doing talking about something that's consequential on something that we haven't yet finished consulting on, or have I missed the point here?
Yeah, that's good. You clear up the process. Yeah.
Yeah. So the decision before you today is not a decision to notify the plan that comes
Yes.
in the future. Yeah. So what we are doing is we are developing the plan in chunks, if you like. So what you have before you, as Mr. Maloney has said, you've got the challenges, the vision and the objectives. So we get those hopefully signed off. That provides confidence that when we move to the next stage around the policies, we can develop policies that are aligned with your expectations about those matters. The alternative would be to come back and just say, here's a draft plan, notify it. And there's a risk in that, in the sense that you might have some concerns around some of the more fundamental high-level things like the vision. So today is one step in a process.
But we've got back to a weasel word sort of, because you've now said sign off, and it isn't. Today we're being invited to send it for consultation, not for sign off. And if it was for sign off, then it makes sense to me that we would have a workshop talking about a more detailed look, or where we might be going with policies. But if it isn't sign off, what it is sending it for consultation, then today seems to be the wrong time to be getting in amongst the policy and carrying it out.
Madam Chair, the recommendation reads confirms for inclusion in the draft RPT for consultation. So what we're saying here is we were asking for approval to bolt this into a draft, which then comes back to you in total for approval to notify. At that point, you have another opportunity to make changes to anything in that draft for notification.
Yes. So sorry, Kevin, when you said it was being done in chunks, you mean developing the full plan for then formal consultation, notification, formal consultation, rather than we're going to have a hearing on just this part.
Correct.
And then go into the next part.
That's correct.
Sorry, I don't know if anyone was thinking like that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
But if we don't know what's here yet, because we're consulting on it, doesn't that preempt the consultation by working out what would be consequential on the high level things? I'm just obviously not.
Don't think it's very different to what we do with water planning, for example. We come with visions and higher level and then break it down. Yeah. So I think it's, pretty, but I mean, that's up to you to discuss as well. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Forbes, then Hobbs.
I was thinking that we probably did need to put this off and extend the time frame, but I'm not sure that we do need to. I kind of think that these challenges and objectives are in the right place. The scope, I'm not sure would change. I don't have a feeling that we would change that at this, given another 3-4 weeks. I can't see what extra time would change. I am relatively confident that discussions have happened at both levels, even if there has been a disconnect between those levels. And So
Okay.
and I'm not sure where everybody else sits and what would be gained. Put it this way, I'm not sure what would be gained by by doing another 3 weeks and doing more work on it. And I also don't think there's much to be gained by having the workshop before we do this paper, because this paper is at a high level, and it actually, what I've understood so far from our formal conversations and informal conversations is reflected in this paper.
Thank
Don't know
you,
if that helps,
Councillor Hobbs.
I'm really apologetic. It's just because I've been in so many offline discussions. So this was Waitati on Saturday, and I was beside the DCC tent. I had an hour-long conversation with Councillor O'Malley, and I thought he was complaining about this not being available. Now, I'm not sure whether he was or not, and I couldn't get that clarity. But it raised the question for me, and so I've set up a separate meeting with him later. Okay, I'm just being absolutely honest about this, because here in the city, sometimes whenever I go to a meeting, we get blamed for delays on planning to do with transport, and that's what I'm trying to sort out. I do, for that reason. Well, there's two reasons. Let me just be very clear. I don't want to delay this any further. This is very high level, okay? I'll have a lot to discuss in the next paper, which is, the next step down. This is very high level. I don't want delay for two reasons. I want to get us online with the other councils, and that they, this gets public and they go to it. And secondly, to me, at the same time sits Climate Change Commission and all the work that is going to go, and the demands and the speed needed for public transport. And that's what's driving my both engagement and trying to keep this moving. But I do have this problem, and it came quite apparent at that blessed meeting that we had about the roads. And I heard the councillors there complaining about NZTA keeping things quiet, and there was all sorts of rumours and God knows what went on, and I can do without that in my life. But I couldn't understand totally when the DCC is complaining, their lead transport person is complaining about lack of involvement or delay. So I'm not sure if I'm making sense or not, but you can see the problem that I think that we have.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Deaker, Councillor Laws, and then Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I like the paper we've got. I like the timeline. I can see no reason whatever to extend the timeline. In fact, I can see a lot of reasons why we shouldn't. In terms of what Councillor Hobbs has just been talking about, my involvement with the Connecting Dunedin City, with the New Dunedin Hospital Advisory Group, on which I represent you all, the Tertiary Precinct Planning Group, the Central City Advisory Group, all of those, to a large extent, as far as I'm concerned, are about PT and how we can make it work better and how we can work together better as councils. And the conversations have always been ambitious and cooperative and collaborative. There has been anxiety about NZTA, certainly, and the decision-making over the one-way system through the city in relationship to the hospital build. There has been frustration, and I say this very, very quietly, with their own staff and consultants. They're being driven around the twist by what they see as slow, in fact, to quote Councillor O'Malley, glacial movement by them. I have never heard that accusation made about the relationship with us or our public transport staff, quite the reverse. So I think this is all good. Let's get on with it. Let's have the workshop where we can talk about the fine-grained stuff and then get back to restoring our PT systems back to their pre-COVID health, and be more ambitious for them, face the climate change challenge. There's a lot of work to be done here. Absolutely. We've got to have a good, strong, and to use that word again, ambitious RPTP. I'm just busting to get on with it.
Thank you. Councillor Laws.
I guess I've got a question, and that is, we're doing what we're doing because we have a legislative requirement to fulfil, correct? And that is, this is what we're required to do under the Land Transport Management Act of 2003, not 2002. So that's what we're doing. We've done some research, or we've done some consultation before we've even got to where we are now. We've asked for feedback from those people, but only in Dunedin and Queenstown. So I guess the question I'd have is, because it's germane to whether or not we've consulted enough before we even get to here, Michael, is were Clutha, Waitaki and Central Otago District Council included? Because it doesn't seem to me that they have been.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, so we've
Well,
certainly
their feedback's not
outstuck.
here.
Sorry?
Their feedback's not in this paper.
So we've had staff engagement with them, and councillors have met, I understand, with Waitaki and mentioned the Clutha meeting, and so that's been picked up and will get alluded to in the workshop following this.
I guess
So it has
we
been with staff.
endorsed the approach to engagement.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that the challenges, for example, were all tested with, initially worked up between Queenstown, ourselves, NZTA and Dunedin, and then tested with the wider 5 TAs in that picture. And then, as I say, there have been separate meetings with staff at all of those councils.
Yes, because I'm complaining right now about how imbalanced this report and consideration is, and how slanted it is towards just 2 TAs, and how it effectively ignores the people and the communities living in areas where we don't have public transport. So I haven't seen anything in this report that says anything you say it's coming up in the workshop. Is that right? Well, you'd expect it to be in the paper, given that here is, in quite significant detail, the feedback of folk living in Dunedin and Queenstown. There it is. There's the attachment. There's the appendix. Nothing there from Waitaki, Clutha, Central Otago. So I don't know what they're thinking, and it's not presented to me. You tell me it's going to come up in the workshop, I'll be fascinated to hear it, but it should be in this paper.
I guess the question is, did those views that you've spoken about already go into informing that high level thinking or not? Yeah.
So the objective that we've had is to produce a regional plan, not a Dunedin or Queenstown plan. And that's why we've got high level staff trying to deliver on all of that.
Yep. Oh, that isn't answering the question, really, is it?
So
Where's the feedback from the other TAs?
So as we talked at the last briefing, the stakeholder workshops were limited to Dunedin and Queenstown, because they had the most skin in the game with respect to where our investment is currently going. But we have had engagement with all the TAs to try and tease out their aspirations in that area.
That is in the next workshop. I've read it, so it says that.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
If you read the next workshop, you'll see it.
Yeah, but it should be in this.
No,
paper.
it doesn't have to be in this paper. This is so bloody high
Okay,
level.
that's a statement, and we've had a response,
That's
so
fair,
that's
mate.
good. We'll move on to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I'm happy to foreshadow. I'm
Yep.
happy to move
Wow.
1 and 2. I'll foreshadow. Happy to move 1 and 2. Then ask that we adjourn in relation to this.
Thank you.
3, 4, and 5, and go on to the next item, and then meet after the workshop for a short meeting to confirm or otherwise when we're better informed, perhaps, about that. If you're happy to do it that way.
Yeah, I think taking 1 and 2 anyway.
Yeah, and well, I've
would
foreshadowed
be
it's
useful at this point. So you've moved that, and you've
you.
seconded that.
Yeah. Okay.
One
So-
wee question.
sorry.
One wee question.
Oh, sorry, I hadn't finished. I was
Oh,
foreshadowing
sorry.
that before I spoke. Sorry.
Councillor Scott had his hand up, and he's been waiting for a long time. So I am
Is that
going to
the way
let
it
him
works around there? You
speak
put your
first.
hand up, you
Okay.
We've got a mover and a
But, yeah,
seconder.
but I'll
Yep.
just
Cool. Yep. You'll reserve your
so
right to speak.
talking to the recommendation number 2, just in relation to the objectives, I've read it. I've read the report. I too was at the Waititi Fair on the weekend, and the members of the public came back with 3 different things. They came back with they wanted a better week, and they don't currently have a weekend service. And I think that's addressed in terms of objectives. Second last bullet point, establish a safe, accessible and attract new customers and high levels of satisfaction. So that'll go into there. Another one turned up and said, why aren't we doing what they're doing in Christchurch in terms of a part of the public transport having zero fares? And I think that's addressed in terms of deliver bus fares that are affordable for both bus users and the community. So that's fair. And a third one came up and said, why aren't we doing what they're doing in Wellington in terms of electrifying their bus fleet? And that's my question. In terms specifically of the driver for potentially for electrification, because we hear about the issues and the challenges, where actually is it the objective in here that will actually drive that type of outcome in terms of electrification?
Sustainable fleet.
Sorry, through the staff, thank you.
It's the first objective, Madam Chair.
Yep.
And what it says in the first objective, contribute to carbon reduction and improve air quality through increased public transport mode share. Okay, and sustainable fleet options. So that's the driver there, sustainable fleet options.
Yeah, it doesn't drop down in the detail of whether it's electrification or some other thing. It's an objective.
Yep. No, thank you.
Thank you. Right, someone else had the. I think Councillor Hobbs had a quick question. Did
I
you?
think
And
it's
then
just been
Kate, you
answered.
can.
Sustainable fleet could also include size.
Yeah.
Right, Councillor Wilson, did
So,
you want to speak?
No, I wasn't. Yeah, sorry, but confusion is that I wasn't speaking to my motion because I was foreshadowing that. What I wanted to ask is that only difficulty with reading this for me is the, where are they? Sorry.
If you want to speak to your motion, do it now as well. Yep.
Okay, well, I just first want to ask about the, I've lost the, sorry, I think I've gone to the December the 9th meeting and just checking something now. Now, there's one where it talks about connecting us. I can't remember if it's an objective or a challenge. I think it's a challenge.
Improves network connectivity.
No, it talks about us. And the only question I had on that, and I appreciate this has gone through a consultation process, but I wasn't sure what us meant there. And I think it either should be Otago or Otago communities, because at the moment, us and connecting them with bus services is as Michael Laws has alluded to, often seen as only Queenstown. And I just wanted to ask staff about that, what us was in the...
Oh, I know, it's Envision. Inclusive, accessible, innovative public transport that connects us and contributes positively.
Thank you. And I just thought if the word Otago was put there, or Otago communities, it would lift it up to...
Which is the way I read it anyway.
Yeah, but... yeah.
No, it's, okay. Did you want to speak on that, Gary? It is probably an important point.
Yeah, that's what's intended, but happy to change the wording if it means more by changing the wording.
Well, that is a question I'm going to ask. I think it does.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyway, to talk to my motion. Again, I'm not being critical of staff. I challenged the way we were going about this because I do think there's a disconnect at every council in some ways between technical and their aspirations as the governance arm. That's a challenge that we have here, and it's a challenge that every council has, and it depends on their processes. We, with the knowledge of staff, because we looped them into the letters, went out and consulted with governance to governance, because that's the appropriate level. And at that point, there wasn't a feed in line. We thought when we did that, there was going to be a different process for that consultation. That didn't happen for a number of reasons, and I appreciate that we haven't resourced this part of our operation well, and they have a lot of other things to do, because during this they've had to do a regional land transport plan as well, and there's been COVID, which has made their lives, I think, one of the hardest parts of this council to deliver services, and we, again, haven't really ramped up their services to do that. Along with that, they were doing the B card and everything else. So this is not criticism, but it is about us as owning what could be an aspirational thing. This isn't just business as usual for me doing a regional passenger transport plan. This is about us being aspirational and bringing those other elected people who think that they want to do that in their councils and making sure that they're comfortable with that process. I'm not saying that things will change, and I'm really comfortable with the challenges, vision and objectives. It's about what is in that other bit that we haven't seen yet, we haven't workshopped, and therefore that's why I'm happy to move 1 and 2, and I don't think we're meant to speak to a motion to lay it on the table or to adjourn, so I probably shouldn't, but I'd feel more comfortable to understand what's in the workshop and that process to get us to that point with the governance, if there is time, before I vote on 3, 4 and 5. And that is why.
Sorry, Kate, and understanding your motion then as well, just a point of clarification. You've moved 1 and 2. Did you just say there's a third?
I want the third part of that was to, once we've dealt with we adjourn this debate now.
After 1 and 2.
After 1 and 2, we then deliver, we deal with the other item on the agenda. We then adjourn the meeting and come back to 3, 4 and 5 after we've done the workshop, so that we are all better informed what that process is. Because I don't think.
Okay, was your understanding as the seconder that you were seconding that as well? Okay, sure. That's good, just clarifying that. Have you finished? Sorry, Kate, I interrupted you. Great.
Thank you for your patience.
Councillor Deaker, as the seconder, did you want to speak? Okay. We've had quite a good discussion, but Councillor Forbes, Councillor Laws.
I've just got one thing on the objectives, which I didn't find a place to bring in the last discussion. And I'm not sure if those objectives or the vision and adequately cover the need for the integrated planning of shared pathways that link. So I know this is about public transport, but unless it's integrated with shared pathways, bike infrastructure, and things that help people get through those, help people use that public transport network. And I need some confidence that is covered in those objectives. I don't want to come back and when we're looking at some long-term planning.
Second bullet point.
The answer is the second objective.
Well, it says an integrated Otago public transport network of infrastructure services and land uses that increases choice. There's nothing about enabling mode shift in that. It's only about public transport, and that is my problem there. And if you think that covers it, that's
maybe
fine.
Network, not network connectivity, improves network connectivity speaks to that, does it?
Yeah.
Well, it says public
So
transport.
this increases choice.
Increases choice, mode shift choice.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're confident with that, when I'm
That's why
asking
I
for
saw
money
that.
for some bike stands next year.
Okay,
Fine.
thank you. Who did I have next? Councillor Laws, I think.
Sorry. Well, I mean, I could agree with Kate's motion if you excluded 2, because I'd rather that we had the workshop first and then came to what's the underpinning rationale and then come to 3. I'm going to oppose 2, but I want to for lots of reasons. But I'd really like to hear the workshop and be better informed for that debate. It's up to you, but I wish we'd done the workshop first and taken the paper second.
Yeah, at this point then, can I just ask whether or not there is, if we are going to adjourn until after the workshop, Councillor Laws has raised, I think, that you think that taking the objectives and the vision, etc., with the workshop and laying the whole thing on the table for now, rather than agreeing with the objectives. Is there any,
I've got one.
from a staff point of view, is there anything we should consider with that? Is that an advantage or disadvantage in your eyes?
It's got to go through today. It has to go through today.
It's still fine.
Well, I don't know.
Dr. Palmer, you may not want to answer. It may be entirely political, but you may see some reason.
Yes, I think Mr. Maloney can comment on the effect on timeline, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, if you make a decision today not to adopt the challenges, vision and objectives, then it will delay the project.
If we didn't make
sorry,
it
could you
later
expand
after
on the
workshop.
project for concrete implementation or?
Achieving the annual plan date.
Yeah, but that's not what the question is.
Okay, thanks. Yep. Rightio, we have a mover and a seconder. I think everyone who wanted to speak has spoken at this point, or no? We've still got some hands.
Yeah.
Councillor Scott, Councillor
Well,
Calvert.
with the mover and the seconder, entertain
Yes.
delaying the second recommendation, because my sense is that once we spend some time in the workshop, we'll quickly go through these recommendations. We're going to have to.
I agree.
So, I mean, yeah, so that's the question. Kate and Michael.
It's fine. Lay the whole thing on the table then and deal with it.
I'm happy. In fact, I think
If we adjourn and then have the workshop and then deal with the whole thing, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I think I want to be really clear that it won't change my view for the staff's sake, because I think they're probably feeling hammered when that certainly isn't the intention.
We'll do the workshop first and then come back to this.
Correct.
Councillor Calvert.
But
You
I
can
was-
talk on that.
I was going to,
Yeah.
that
Do the
amendment
same.
I was going to second.
Okay, thank you.
It's wonderful.
Yes, sorry, I asked Dr. Palmer and Gary, but I should have asked Ms. Gardner as well. Watched from a staff perspective, whether there's anything we need to consider.
Well, I think, I suppose I just want to, in reference to Councillor Wilson's staff feeling hammered comment, I guess it's a little disappointing that we heard that there was an issue at, in my case, a couple of minutes before the meeting started. And we did come to you and you did make a decision on the approach, which is what we have done. So there will be, I mean, our timing and etc., just to be clear, is not related to resourcing or B-card rolled out or anything else. It's the way that we plan the project. If you choose to delay, we will not meet the time frame. I think you have some considerations around how you rescind the decision that you made on the 9th of December, because I think you will have to look at that. And I think you've got some requirements and standing orders about that. And I also think you need to consider that what the resulting delay doesn't just mean that we don't meet the time frame, but it also means that staff who are programmed to be working on other things will be working for longer on this. So there is a follow-on impact, which you might want to factor into your thinking. And I guess the last thing is, at some point, I think it would have been fortuitous for governors to brief staff on the conversations that happened, governor to governor. And it seems that that is somewhat at the heart of the issue. So I'm just laying out where the issues lie for us moving forward. If you make a decision today that is going to impact on the timeframe of this work, and perhaps some lessons for us in terms of how we engage together.
Yes, I'd actually like to speak, and I probably am not going to be too popular, but I'm going to vote against as well, adjourning and considering later and leaving on the table. I saw a lot of sense in what Councillor Deaker spoke on before. I think you spoke very eloquently in terms of our role and leadership in regional public transport planning. We made a clear decision. We showed governance, leadership. We're leaving something on the table. There obviously is some discomfort with governors around the region not having input that perhaps they felt that they should have had. We have had strong engagement at a staff level, and also to what degree is it the responsibility of staff at other councils to brief their own councillors as well, is another matter. Yes, perhaps we could have done something better, but we did make a deliberate decision. We would need to rescind it. I don't feel comfortable with just delays for the sake of it, really. I know other people have arguments which they've put as well, but I'm not going to vote for it at this point. Yep. Councillor Calvert.
I can see the tension and the feeling that we do want to deal with it today, but in the other order feels more comfortable, and I think we'll end up with the same sort of outcome but a much more comfortable result. I am questioning the idea that any of our meetings can, by saying that we agree to a timeline, commit ourselves to agreeing something at a particular meeting. I don't think that the democratic process requires us to rescind a decision if the decision was to agree to something at this meeting, but other people who know more about democratic processes than me, I mean, we've already heard, and I'm sure that our chair and our CE are much better versed than me in democracy, but it just doesn't feel right to me to suggest that we would have to rescind a decision if the decision had the effect of committing us to deciding something on a particular day. That seems to me a unlikely democratic outcome.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a point definitely to get advice on. Thanks.
Yeah. So, and my preference would be to leave it till later in the day, but be very committed to having a decision later in the day, having reconvened the meeting, understanding that this timeline is, we have thought it was achievable and that we haven't got a reason for not achieving it if we do it today, later and after the workshop. So,
Madam Chair.
We're just checking at the need to rescind or not, just the point around agreeing on the approach to engagement. Yeah. So anyway, sorry, that's what's going on in the background. Sorry, I missed all the hands that went up. I think Councillor Laws was actually
I was going to ask that the
first.
motion be put.
Yeah.
And I understand that the motion is to delay 2, 3, 4 and 5 until after the workshop, and I agree with much of what Councillor Caldick said. So
It's not rescinding it.
I ask that the motion be put.
I'll second that.
Rightio. Okay, then everyone's aware. Oh, we haven't got it up, have we, at the moment? Shall we put it up? Just so we can see clearly that we've got the right words there. Thank you. Easy enough to do, Diane.
I think we got the gist of it. We're going to delay 2, 3, 4 and 5 until after.
We just
the
adjourn
workshop.
during the meeting till
after Arrow and Carolina.
That's all good.
We're receiving the report, number one.
Yeah.
And
We really need that
No,
up on the
we haven't
screen.
got-
Don't we all understand?
Yeah.
It's
We
only the
understand.
English language.
It's one phrase.
It doesn't hurt people to feel we're asking questions.
I've come back round to thinking.
Oh, you mean the people
I
that are
haven't
listening?
seen this after the
Nice.
workshop. Is it up
we're
there?
aiming for the new,
Yeah, there's nothing.
the actual, sorry, Kate, we haven't got it.
But just even verbally, we're going
Yeah,
to
so
delay.
I'm just going to ask Kate to restate it so we can capture it.
I think the motion that I accepted and Michael accepted, Deco accepted, was that we just lay everything on the table until we adjourn the meeting after the Arrow and Cadrona, and after the workshop we open the meeting again and
We
put
don't
the
need to
motions.
refer to 2, 3 and 4. We just need to say, receives the report,
Lay it on the table till
lay it
after
on
the
the
workshop.
table till
After the workshop.
So
workshop.
one, we receive the report. Two, this,
I thought that the motion had been that I'm happy to receive the report, but it's easier if we just lay everything on the table.
okay.
That was the amendment that was sought earlier on. We just lay everything on the
Not
table.
receives the report.
Yeah, we just lay everything on the table until,
I think we need
So
to receive
one
it to
goes,
lay it on the
Diane.
table.
okay,
Yeah.
receive it.
So
Receive the
one,
report
receive it, 2, lay it on the table till.
until
Oh,
after the
I thought
workshop.
you just said that we weren't
Oh, sorry.
receiving the
I thought-
report.
Yes, we are.
Like,
We
We
have
are.
to.
We are.
Apologies.
You can't lay it on the table without receiving it.
Okay.
Yes.
Adjourn. So we just received the report and we don't need a second motion, is it? We just adjourn.
lay it on the table.
Lay it on the table until we read.
Procedural motion, it does require a vote.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So we just lay it on the table. That's what you have.
So this is, paper is laying on the table
Until after the workshop.
until after the workshop
Where we
sometime.
reconvene this committee.
Yeah, but that could be any time.
No.
No, it's after this workshop today.
Today.
It was
Okay.
very clearly that was sent.
Okay. I won't be here, I don't think,
Following the workshop.
until the meeting is reconvened. Great.
Today.
So it's a toe.
After the workshop today.
Today.
Today,
Following today's.
today's workshop.
There you go.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, but that could be in 6 months' time still.
Absolutely.
Today.
So
Today. No, I'd say today.
it has to say reconvene today,
Yeah.
following the workshop. So it's clear that we're not kicking up the touch.
Reconvened today is fine, probably, isn't it? Without the workshop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Until the meeting is
Later
reconvened
today.
later today. Sorry, Diane, you probably got that. It's just not showing. Yeah. Okay, well, we know what we're voting on now, at least. We received the report, and number 2 is paper is laying on the table until the meeting is reconvened today. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? No. It is 1. Thank you, everyone, for the robust debate.
We'll see you shortly, guys.
No one.
Don't run away.
We can't record it because we didn't.
It's too
talk
late.
about division and who knows.
Time.
Yeah, but just was 1.
One on the voices.
Yeah, that's right.
Who actually are concerned sometimes about our use of staff and time and cost.
I think we spent enough time talking about this, guys.
Rightio. So what do we do with the next
responding.
paper then? Are we reconvening to hear? No.
It's just a bit of a waste of money.
Yeah, no, I know. So I'm
agree.
just,
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing
Yeah.
it now.
that's great.
And then you'll just need a motion to adjourn the meeting. No.
Yeah.
Because you're adjourning.
So moved.
Thank you. Welcome, Anita. And the next paper for consideration is the Arrow Cadrona FMU plan provisions. Laptop has frozen. That's cool.
And it's
Anita,
not a decision, it's a noting.
Yeah,
recommendation.
It's a decision
noting.
to note.
Oh,
Yeah,
for
It is a
God's sake.
decision.
It is. Thank you. Anita, did you want to highlight anything particularly on this paper?
I guess the key thing, okay.
Yes, I'm just cross with people.
Oh, sorry.
Just
Yep.
to note that this is the culmination of a work program that started some time ago, and I think perhaps before some of the councillors currently around the table, before me, in fact, before I arrived here, not before I was born, obviously.
It's not that obvious.
Oh, good.
And it's just reconfirms the decisions that you made in November 2019 in response to the Minister's recommendation, where we said we would conclude the Yarrow and the Cardrona, lay them on the table, and then start on a new FMU. So this is the end of Arrow and Cardrona for now, until we pull it all together in the Dunstan Rohe when we put the land and water plan together. You've seen all the technical information and workshops. We had a lot of councillors turn up at the meetings where we presented these. They were really robust meetings, so this is just to share that information and confirm that this is the tentative end point for these 2 rivers for water quantity.
Councillor Scott, Councillor Hobbs.
Yeah, look, it was my pleasure to be involved in there were 4 meetings, 2 on the Arrow and 2 on the Cardrona, and thank you to Sarah and Anita and all your staff. And Gwyneth was there for a period too, sorry. So that was absolutely marvellous. I think the Arrow was pretty straightforward and well received. Is that fair, Anita?
Yes.
Yeah. The Cardrona was more complex. There was, as Anita said, there was some rigorous debate. I think what we're proposing in the middle and the bottom reach is really impressive. In terms of the upper reach, I think, to be honest, there were a number of questions that were unanswered. That's not to say that the answers weren't there in the background. Nevertheless, I think what the staff and the council's come up with is good, and I support it. And these recommendations are now going into the land and water plan, which will be formally heard, for quite a period of time, 2 years' time. And there's negatives and positives about that. I think the negative is that it's a long time, but on the positive side, it gives the community time to do their own research, because that all takes time too, So if there's anybody that's opposing it, for example, Cardrona, and I've spoken to Gary about this, they've actually got some time to do their homework, to build their case, and it'll all be heard in a formal way in the land and water plan in 2 years' time. And I think the council is to be commended that we have made our case and we have presented it. We have put our line in the sand, so our communities have the opportunity to consider it. So thank you, Anita. Thank you, Sarah and Gwyneth. I think it's a positive step forward.
Thank you, Councillor Scott, for your role as well and consultation.
Thank you.
Sorry, next I had Councillor Hobbs, then Calvert.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations, Anita and the planning team, for that award. It really is superb work that's actually happened, and you're being recognised by your peers. So Otago planners can feel pretty marvellous. Okay, paragraph 31 talks about, in addition, consents have the technical information that underpans the limits of Arrow and Cardrona, and can use this as part of their decision-making process. My question is, further consents being considered ahead of the land and water plan will use this as a guide?
Yeah, so through you, Chair, that question came up a few times in terms of concern about the fact that we've got these numbers and they're not in a regulatory space. The consents team use the best available information to inform a decision. So one example we had is in the Cardrona, there's a drying reach, and we now know that that drying reach can be dry for longer and more frequently with abstraction. The consents team know that information as well. So if an application should come in that stretch to take water, they would consider this information when they're considering the application. What I can't tell you is what that decision would be, but that's part of the information. So the plans, the numbers aren't in the plan, but they are a part of the information that is considered in consenting.
Thank you. Secondly, and second question, and it's to do with paragraph 19, and it's about the middle reach of the Cardrona. The surface takes replaced with groundwater takes. Can you possibly, from the Wanaka Basin, Cardrona gravel aquifer? So can you just explain that to me in words of
Yeah, sure. And I didn't bring Delina. She's far more across this than I. But in essence, the weather science has showed us is the most sustainable way to manage the water is for those surface water takes, when they come in for renewal, to become groundwater takes, so that more water stays in the river.
Which means people have to drop wells and things.
Yes, that's right. So the key thing with that is it's not a short-term solution. It's a long-term progressive solution, and it's around providing the support for people when they do renew to take groundwater.
And sorry, to go back to 31, to be very clear, when at one stage, when Plan Change 7 was going up to the Environment Court, and before it did, there were commissioners sitting and not taking any consideration of Plan Change 7 when they were given 35-year leases. This says that this is not like Plan Change 7, but it's information that's out there that should be taken into consideration by commissioners or consent givers.
Regard to.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a section 104 matter.
Something as well, or no? Oh, yeah, you're good. Yep, sorry.
Thank you.
No.
Yep.
Sorry,
Thank you. Finished, Councillor Hobbs? Yep.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Councillor Calvert.
I was going to move this if no one has.
We had Councillor Deaker, I think, just wanting a question. Did you? Oh, you're right. Okay, great. Oh, great. Okay. Sorry, there's two over here, and then we'll move it. Yep. Councillor
Oh, well,
Kelleher.
it doesn't mean the end of anything. I was just going to put it on, get it moved so
Just
people
if
could
they
talk
want,
to it.
yeah, if they've got more questions at this point.
Just speak to it when appropriate.
Sure, yeah, after we've moved that. Yep, questions at this point? Yep.
Anita, just a quick question on the technical work, item 10, references to the Lindis.
So, what was the question, sorry?
Well, we're saying that a 43-year natural flow data set synthesised unmodified Lindis flows with NIWA report on its limitations. And so then have we used the Lindis as a representative catchment?
That's what I understand NIWA has done. Yes, that's the synthetic model.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Laws.
I was just going to, there's section 19, there's the graph there about what's being proposed in the middle, upper and lower reaches. Do you have a status quo graph? So what's the difference between that and the status quo?
In terms of what's currently being abstracted, I don't have a graph, but that's in essence what is being abstracted.
What is here is what is being abstracted.
What's being provided for will provide for the existing level of abstraction. If that's the question you're asking.
No, I'm asking how much are they allowed to take currently, as opposed to how many litres per second, as against how much they are proposed to be allowed to take.
So my understanding is that these rivers don't have a limit currently.
There's no limit at all.
I'd have to look in the plan, but lots of the rivers in Otago don't have limits, hence why we're putting limits on. And Schedule 2A of the water plan provides for
so there's currently no minimum flows for the Cadrona. I thought there were.
I'd have to check. I'm not 100% certain, but the plan currently provides for what's in a 2A limit or the maximum take of consent.
Can you email me or us
that
information?
Yes.
No, this is the proposed minimum flow.
No, I know what the proposal is. I'm interested in what the status quo is.
Well, there is no minimum flow. Yeah.
Well, that's what she's going to check.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% certain. I would rather check than give you something that's not correct.
The only reason is, anecdotally, I had the conversation. He said, we're doing, doesn't matter. It was the conversation I had at the show with somebody who abstracts current.
Get that to you this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Right. So we've got them over in a seconder. Did we record who they were? Perhaps, okay. Councillor Calvert.
Yes.
Moved. Councillor Deaker seconded.
Correct.
I've actually got a quick question too.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Calvert. Do you want to ask your question, and then if you would like to speak, go for it too.
Has any consideration been given to tree planting, as in people nicking off with water by planting hungry, thirsty trees and taking water that way? Or is it only through pipes?
Not through tree planting, no.
So we haven't at all thought about whether, if a river has a minimum flow that we think is reasonable now, that if a whole lot of trees are planted and there isn't any water.
So what we haven't pinned to this is the water quality aspects and the land uses. So there's still a bit more work to do in these rivers and in the broader Dunstan FMU. If there are catchments that are water short or are potentially fully allocated after these limits and allocations are set, then we look at which levers we might need to pull to ensure that the integrity of those takes are not undermined by land use practices.
We are able to tree planting thirsty trees.
Yes.
Excellent.
Do you want your right of reply or no?
I just wanted to say that this has been a lot of work, and although it isn't the end of the road, it's, what did Winston Churchill say? Not the beginning of the end, but the end of the beginning, or whatever it is. But I think it's wonderful that our staff have got to this point. I am slightly concerned about Councillor Scott's comment that it's a line in the sand, because I don't think that that's what this planning process is all about, but I think it's a huge step forward and an iterative process, and good that we've got this far. Thank you to the staff.
Right.
Yeah, can I just clarify that in response to that? What I actually meant was, that at least we're articulating what we're thinking, and maybe a line in the sand isn't the appropriate word.
Yep, thank you.
Apologies.
We've got a couple of people who've had their hands up, ready to go for this debate part. So Councillor Kelleher, then known.
Okay, so we're in debate as opposed to...
Yeah, you're welcome to
Yes.
speak on the motion.
Look, all I wanted to pass on was that I was impressed by the processes the staff put into this. The outcome certainly around the Cadrona is there is some element of concern amongst all parties up there. The commentary around, well, we've got a 2-year time frame now, and how that is best used. It has been encouraged, certainly by me, to those parties, and it's not only the water users, that they use that time well and do their own work if they wish. And what level they wish to publicise or work that through with the community is their choice. I think some may look to bring that information to council earlier if it's available, depending on what they work up, and they may be requesting for it to be considered as what is notified as opposed to their submission to the notification. So, but that will be up to them to the extent, I guess, of how much they put into engagement with the community on it, and then council's willingness to receive that. And that's for a later date, but it's just to highlight to council that there is a bit of disquiet out there about the outcome.
Yep. Councillor Known.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So this sort of triggers the first step in the water allocation and minimum flow process for priority catchments, and these are 2 of the 3 priority catchments that we've been focused on for quite some time. So I just really want to, and others have already said this, about acknowledging staff's contribution. And I think it's really important that we recognise that contribution has involved hydrology, ecology, and economic analysis that sits behind the numbers that appear in front of us for both the Arrow and Cadrona. So I believe this has been a robust process. And I just also want to acknowledge Councillor Scott's contribution to those, and staff to those 2, or actually 4 public meetings, 2 for each catchment. And also the turnout we had at those meetings, I think it was well balanced. There was a cross section of people that attended those gatherings, which I think was really valuable. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Oh, sorry, Madam Chair. It should be, instead of the council, it should be the committee at the front end of that recommendation. I meant to say that at the start.
The council, the council.
Under the committee rather than the council.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
yes,
so-
that the committee
yeah, sorry, I
notes
meant
the
to say that.
reports. Thanks for spotting that, that's right. We have the motion then, we'll put it all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried. Okay, thank you everyone. At this point, I just need to mention that I forgot in the apologies to mention Edward Allison and Lynn Carter, so I'll amend that because they are apologies for today, and also as a result of the adjournment yesterday and the new day of this meeting, it then inconvenienced some of our members. So apologies for that, and also
I'll move
to
those
staff.
apologies.
Thank you. Moved Councillor Calvert, seconded Councillor Noon, all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you for that. Sorry to staff that waited around yesterday and then appeared today as well. We really appreciate that. Also wanted to just thank everyone who's been involved today in both of these papers from council. There's been a heap of work going on in both public transport and planning. Even to get to these papers today, a few bits of paper for us is a lot of work from staff, and we really appreciate the quality of the papers and your involvement in answering all of our robust questions today. So thank you very much. We do need to adjourn. I need to state that I'm not available this afternoon as well. So we're going to have a different chair this afternoon. It will be Kate, I imagine. Yeah, no, I'm not here from 1:30 anyway.
We may get there, you never know.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But at this point, we stand adjourned, and I guess I need to move that as well.
As part of the motion that I did.
No, we'll just cover it off anyway.
It has to happen right now.
Councillor Wilson, Mo, seconded, Councillor Noon, all in favour?
No.
Against, carried. Thanks for adjourned.
Cup of tea?
Yep. Quick cup of tea. Very